Well, welcome to yet another episode of Owning the Goal, the podcast where we dive deep into the mindset, strategy, and hustle behind building something great. And today we're bringing back a fan favorite, my friend Mike Mondello, founder and frontman of more bands that I could possibly remember, but currently playing with Front Street and the Decoys, two powerhouse bands lighting up the Rhinebeck, New York music scene. The last time we had Mike on, you may remember he dropped gems on sales and relationship building. This time we're talking about how he has built the brand of his bands, how he has built the brand of himself, from cultivating a loyal fan base to landing bigger gigs and turning music into a thriving business. If you are a creative person, a community builder, or someone who just wants to turn passion into momentum, this episode is for you. So let's get right into it. Welcome to the show, Mike, and thanks so much for joining again.
Hi, how you doing? Nice to see
Uh,
you again, Ryan.
yourself as well. Yourself as well. Needless to say, I had to start a podcast so we can stay in better touch. But hey,
Yeah, pretty amazing, actually.
it does the work. It
Yeah,
does the
very
work.
convenient. I don't have to go to the city to see you. That's great.
I'll be up there soon enough. So last episode, Mike, you were able to share wisdom that transcended, what we were talking about, real estate and whatnot, and really just got into humans. So when we set this one up today, the idea was whether someone is listening as a musician or not, is taking some of the lessons learned of a lifelong musician like yourself and translating those into like everyday applications that one could apply to their real life. So that's what we want to bring to you, the listener. So where I want to start, Mike, is at the beginning. Talk to me about the first time music sprung itself on you and you decided this is something that you wanted to pursue.
Well, the first time I ever really had a song affect me was when I was like, probably it was like 1969. I don't know, I was 6, 7 years old. And we were renting a cabin in upstate New York, actually not too far away from here, because that's where I am right now in upstate New York, near Rhinebeck. The people in the cabin next to us used to blast their radio out their window, and it was kind of a cool scene because we were friends with all the other kids. They had a big family, and we had a stream right there, and we just had a lot of fun. My dad was good friends with their dad, and et cetera, et cetera. But the first song I remember, because they used to listen to, I think it was WABC back then on AM radio before FM radio. And the first song I heard was that I remembered was "Sweet Caroline" by Neil Diamond, which it's interesting that that would be the one, But I guess that's the first time I remember like a song, like, and it actually impacted me. Um, and then from there, basically, I was the seventh child of 11 kids, and my older brothers and sisters. My older brother Carl, who you know, well, my oldest brother, they were very, very much into music and they played in bands and stuff. Carl and Richie. My sister was worked for the record business. Her boyfriend, who she ended up marrying, was like one of the top New York City guitar players at the time. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, the influences that I had. But primarily, I think it was when my brother Joe acquired a harmony guitar for my older brother, and that ended up in the house. And that's when I started like really getting into it and picking it up. I mean, prior to that, I used to pretend I was a singer and all that other stuff, but I never could play an instrument. And I would pretend that I could play guitar, and I would pick it up and kind of do and tell people I could play, but I really couldn't play, And they'd be like, "Are you sure you can play?" But the catalyst, I think, was when my brother-in-law Jimmy, because they used to come upstate on the weekends from the city, mainly because Jimmy was in a band for Shake's Sake that used to play in Chatham, New York, believe it or not, on the weekends. They were kind of like the house band, so they would travel up from New York City. Huge influential rock and roll band at the time, kind of on the level of Foghat. But he showed me the chords, and the first song I ever really played was "You Can't Always Get What You Want," because it was C and it was F. It was very easy. And then I graduated to D. But for years, I played D the wrong way. And just, had a guitar with no amp. And just a lot of times you'd break a string and you didn't have the money to buy a set of strings. So you'd have to play with 5 strings. And then you get the 6 string and it was a big deal. You went to me when I was 16 years old. I was playing with these cats who were in their 20s, one who had gone to Berkeley. And I was like leading that band. I was writing the songs, you know, and leading the band and, just always was very gregarious, very not afraid of am I hearing the ocean? It's weird.
Maybe you never know. We're
Yeah.
in New York
Sorry.
City.
Yeah, it was weird. I just heard something that sounded like the ocean. It's weird, but anyway, yeah. So I just was always kind of like just a show off, entertainer. I just was always very gregarious, and music was definitely a way for me to channel that. So I was always the guy that I was always like kind of as you probably well know, because we've had our, ups and downs with it. I'm just a very, very intense musician, and performer. And I kind of feel bad in a way because I know I inflicted a lot of bad ideas on people in the past in my development as a musician, because I think as even Dave Grohl has said, the rule of thumb is that if you want to be a good musician, you're going to suck first. You got to suck to be good, and you got to be not afraid to suck. You got to get out there and and just do it. And if it doesn't sound good, people are going to be like, yeah, it sounds good. But you're going to judge yourself appropriately if you really want to do it. Hopefully, you're not oblivious to the fact that you suck and you're always going to suck, because I guess that might be possible. But, it depends on what level you want to play at as well, because I don't really put it on different levels. I mean, somebody could be gigging every day for years, or somebody could never gig because they have stage fright, but that doesn't make one musician better than the other, you know? So in any event, yeah, I mean, from then till now, it's just been a musical journey. It's just like whatever musical opportunity arose. I was always very passionate about it. I met you in the advertising agency. We started playing and we were on kind of the same level, in our journey, if you will. And, we learned a lot together. And then you became the wise one now, which was kind of funny because you kind of circled back to because I replaced you as a bass player in Gender 2000, where it was like they called me up and said, "You want to play bass?" And I'm like, "What? I'm a guitar player. I'm not a bass player." But then I ended up being with them for like 15 years, and then you came back on drums. And I remember when you came back, we were like lost lambs. Like we kept like getting banned from playing in different bars because yeah, we would just like get up there on stage and, just play whatever and not even really pay attention to what was happening in the room. And then you were the guy that like really brought our focus back, to actually make melding the whole point if you're going to do being like not just a performance band, but a bar band is to meld the music with what's happening in the room and get that energy in sync. I mean, you could be going ding, 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 or you could be going, you know, so anyway, so from then till now, essentially, that's kind of I could tell you stories for hours and hours, as you well can as well. We've had some good shining moments together, like moments that stand out. But for the most part, it's just I've just loved music, and I've been able to sort of channel my love of music through actually playing it. I guess the only conclusion I have to this whole thing is that what I'm particularly excited about at this juncture in my career, if you will, is my guitar ability since COVID, because that's when I refocused myself and I threw off a lot of the cover band sensibility and stuff, where you just kind of like learn the song to a point and then you just do it. And it's kind of like, you're working. But I kind of stopped playing bass in different bands and I just kind of like really got into the guitar and it became me and the guitar. And I got rid of the guitar pick too. And so for the last probably 5 years now, I have my guitar ability has literally gone from here to like, I mean, I'm doing stuff now. I'll look down and be like, I'm doing that. Like, wow, because I just every day, it's kind of like you like to work out and like bikes and stuff. It's like every day, boom, 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 at least an hour. And I always have the guitar where I work. So I'll just pick it up when I want to take the break and just do this for a couple of minutes. But what I've found is playing with your fingers opens up just a whole, like my guitar player one day was like, after a gig, was like, "You sound like you had an EBO or something. Like, what was that?" And I'm like, because you just you just kind of hitting it a certain way and getting these tones out of it that a lot of it is just nothing that you really am consciously doing. So it's really definitely been exciting for me to be able to, you know, kind of meld with the guitar in that way and be able to fluently play things that I've never really been able to play before. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where we're at musically anyway. So from a
That's
musician standpoint, that's kind of, my sensibility, if you will.
yeah. Well, I mean, I've known you for all this time, and I still learn every time because thinking about, I didn't know, dating back to Sweet Caroline, one of the anyone who's in a cover band knows if you play that, the dance floor fills, and we sometimes as musicians,
Yeah.
and that's an interesting point to, I think our listeners, because it's where we always like to drill it back to. So there's so many nuggets in there I want to get to, but I want to, like, let's focus on the song "Sweet Caroline" for a second, right? Musicians, if you aren't a musician out there, sometimes if you are a musician and you have to play that, we kind of call that, it's like, oh, Brown Eyed Girl Gets Called by Van Morrison, right? Another dance floor filler, guaranteed every time. Just like Sweet Home Alabama, 7 million songs, practically everything the Beatles, right? The Kinks, we go through them all. And we all look at each other many times and say, this again. And I like to say, I help bands turn that frown around because I go, hey, wait a minute, who are we doing this for? If we want to play in a room by ourselves, let's just go get a rehearsal studio. But if we're going to go to the lengths and play at a bar and do the schlep and the load in and the load out and whatever, we're playing for the people that are there. And it's, very much like sales, right? No, not really anybody cares what you think. They want to know, what are they getting out of this? And what someone's getting out of it when you play Sweet Caroline, or any of us play Sweet Caroline, is they're getting, I am going to geek out here, a joyful feeling of letting themselves go. Maybe maybe it brings them back to the first time they ever heard that song, like you, and
Hmm.
transports them to a different time. It brings them mental health because they're happy, and just so many positive things that you and I both know, music does for oneself, but then it does for others. So, um, what I wanted to dig to, because I've always found it so impressive, and you've walked us through your kind of your musical learning journey, is where do you think that perseverance to always continually getting better comes from? And within that, you just mentioned earlier when we were just talking before we got on the show about how you were done vocal training. And to my
Hmm.
knowledge, when we played together, you hadn't done vocal training. So I've
No.
always been impressed that. So a couple of questions. A, start us off with, like, when did you start singing and realize like you were actually singing in key? And then the rest of your drive to just always be a lifelong learner with musician, as a musician.
Well, I've always been singing right since I was a kid. It's interesting because my son was always singing when he was a little kid. Now my granddaughter is always singing, and me and her make up songs together. So it's kind of fun. The melodies, the lyrics, the whole bit. But, I remember my brother-in-law, once again, big musical influence, who, again, at the time he almost started Blondie with Chris Stein. That's how big he was at the time. I had him as like a musical influence, Jimmy Agnello. But anyway, I remember it was a Montrose song. It goes, "Every night I've been thinking of you." And I remember I was on a swing bench and I started singing it because we would always have the music playing. We always had records on. Again, I had a big musical influence with my older brothers and sisters. And I remember him saying, "Morning, Mike. Wow, that sounds amazing. Wow, you're a really good singer. And that kind of stuck with me, so it kind of gave me the confidence. Um, but I went for a long, long period, I feel like, of not being as good a singer, only because there are certain fundamentals to doing it that you have to follow. Um, so I mean, if I kind of go back and listen to my singing over the years, if I have a recording, a lot of times I'm kind of not, not happy with what I'm hearing. I think it was passable. I think it worked. I think it depended on what I was singing to, and it depended on the moment. The singing is also a very physical instrument where I've learned over the years, and this is one of the reasons I took the singing lessons, was that you've got to be very careful not to throw your voice out because it's exactly like throwing your back out. And I think we all know if you're not a singer, that's the best thing to relate it to. You throw your back out and it really screws you up. And now you're having trouble walking, basic things that you don't even think about. You're like, yeah, yeah. So it kind of like, that was one of the reasons I found that I was losing my talking voice a lot, where I could literally not talk because I was going to Front Street week after week and singing AC/DC. And actually, the YouTube type stuff is probably the hardest stuff to sing. So anyway, but I always was not afraid to be the singer, as you well know. I was always the guy that kind of, you didn't even have to push me to the front, like this is always, everybody in a band has a role. It's kind of like a team where you get the shortstop and the pitcher and the outfielder. A band situation is the same thing. Everybody's got their get the drummer in the back, keeping down the groove, guitar player, melody, the singer, but the singer is the person who everybody's looking at. Like if you're a singer and you're playing a gig, you look at different faces and every single person is looking at you. Like you catching eye contact with everybody, and you're the guy. So it's kind of a special thing. It's kind of like, the pitcher, I guess it would be the pitcher if you were playing baseball, right? I mean, you're kind of like what the person everybody's looking at, all the time, and everybody else is sort of running support. So I was never afraid to do it, whether I did it well or not, you know. But the main thing I learned about singing in my lessons, besides, and I wish I had known this earlier, is that I have actually a double octave vocal range plus one, where I can go an octave high low, and then I can go like one key higher on both sides. And that was an interesting to find out because when you take vocal lessons, they play the piano and you follow it down. So it's like ding 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 ding. Like anything that they teach you is that warm up is important. If you're gonna go out running, you're not just gonna go out and run, you're gonna stretch. So warming up, stretching. So the great thing about vocal lessons is that based on your voice, they're giving you sort of your own tailored routine on what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Breathing is probably the most important thing now because basically, if you want to sing effectively, there's a balloon in your diaphragm that you blow up. And just like if you're holding a balloon that's blown up, you can feel it, the tightness of it. But if you were to let the air out of that balloon very slowly, it would go, right? So you got air pushing through there, and that's vibrating the balloon to make that noise. So essentially, if you don't breathe effectively and you don't support your voice by virtue of blowing air over it, then your voice wears out, which, if you're singing like low stuff, it doesn't really matter. But if you're singing like, lately I've been singing, like Led Zeppelin and stuff again. And so it's like getting that breath in, and it's the Farinelli technique, it's called actually. So it's been very helpful for like, I don't know if you just noticed, but I just breathed in before, even when I'm talking now, I
Yeah.
breathe in and then I talk because I've realized that it's like if you're running up a hill, you get the first few steps okay. The next couple of steps, you're going to start getting tired. But then by the time you get up to the top, you're like, but if somebody's pushing you up that hill, like you're still kind of moving, but you're not trying as hard. It's like the same concept. So that's really
Yeah.
helped me a lot. Um,
It's for sure.
yeah,
I'm gonna throw you because as you were talking, you brought a thought to my mind, and I think it falls within what our audience loves to hear from us, of just learning about things. So you've always in most of the projects, almost all the projects most of the projects I play with you, you were the leader. In a few others, right? We played bass. You mentioned that, and we're putting that one to the side. But let's talk about when you were the leader of the group. You were the front man. I've never been able to do that. I feel like I have the personality for it, but I don't have any vocal ability, so that's not going to be that effective. But you have both, and you're one of the most authentic and driven people I've ever known, musician or not. So, talk to me about when you set out in the various bands, but looking overarching, and you said, "Okay, I'm going to create this band. I'm going to be." There's music always just pouring into our lives, so that's pretty normal. So, where I'm going with this, Mike, is when you, in the many original bands that you created, that of several of which I was lucky enough to be a part of, when you went on that project, you are bringing in your material. You're bringing in, I'm going to be the gentleman who leads this band. Um, and so you kind of need to sell that to the band itself to get them on board with supporting you. And then you need to sell that, whatever product that's going to be made, to the crowd that's bringing on there. So everything is on the front person in a band, and I've learned so much from you. So what's the mindset of um, when you would start each project, of saying, wow, I'm meeting people that I may not have met ever in my life, right? If I wasn't doing this collaborative thing called music. And now I need to convince them that they should play my material and build that. And then I need to go out to a bar and convince the people in the bar that they should be enjoying this material. Like, I guess just walk me into your brain as a front man, because that's not something I have the concept.
Yeah, I think it comes from basically what you're doing is that even though you're only playing with the other people for a certain amount of time, or you're playing gigs for a certain amount of time, as you go through your day, it's like in your brain, like you're just always conceptualizing, especially if you're a songwriter. I actually Googled not that long ago. I Googled obsessive songwriting disorder just to see if it actually existed. And I kind of got some stuff. When you write original songs, a lot of times they're actually playing in your head, like you can hear them. So I think it was kind of difficult for me in a sense where, as you probably know, because you've been on the receiving end of it, is I had some very definite notions of what the song should sound like. Um, and I was also very influenced by Ray Davies of the Kinks, which I don't think really helped because you can't really emulate his style, that direct, in your face style that he had. He was really one of the only people in the universe that could really pull it off. So I kind of like, I don't think I think I learned. It's kind of, again, you got to suck to be good. So it's sort of like it was a learn as you go. But again, it's kind of having that confidence and being able just to put yourself out there and just be the focal point. Although I'm very comfortable. I mean, in the other band, Gender, whatever, I was the bass player, backed up the lead singer for 15 years, and I was very comfortable doing that as well. Sometimes I prefer that. But yeah, it's just basically you're always conceptualizing. And then when you go into a rehearsal and you first play the song for the band, it's interesting because I always found that the band's first response to the song was always the best one, where they would start playing it and then there would be like the feel that you kind of wanted. There would be just the whole essence of the song was kind of cool. But then as you went on, it would change because the band members would all start to interject their personalities into it, which necessarily is not a bad thing and probably did improve the song. But when you're so vested in a song, it's very difficult, especially when you don't have the experience, to like really kind of like be rattled by that, because you kind of want the guitar to do this, but they're not doing that. And it's like, but in the end, you go back and listen to it, and you're like, oh, that's actually really good. So it took a long time, I think, for me to kind of figure out, like what Davey Bowie always did. He would just give the musicians free reign. He would get like Stevie Ray Vaughan and be like, whatever you want to play, do it. You know, he would never really direct anybody. But then you had Bruce Springsteen, where I read an article lately with Born to Run, where by the time they were done with that album, the band wanted to kill him. And right down to when they were listening to the demo, and he was like, they're all in a room together, and he's like, I think I want to do this over again. And they all just got up and walked out, because it's just such an emotional thing. Look what it did to
Yeah.
Prince, if you read about Prince. So it's, the original band thing is very interesting. I haven't really, interestingly enough, in bands, I've been more of a cover performer. Um, I mean, going back to really the band Gender Super Collider, where I wrote a lot of the stuff that we used to play. Um, it's easier just to play covers with bands. I'm not really, I haven't really been in an original project where I've been writing. All my originals is all me. Like I can do the drums, I can do the bass, I can do the keyboard, I can do all the vocals, I can do all the guitar work. So I'm kind of a one-man band when it comes to musical production, because when I'm not playing out and I'm not appraising and I'm not, gardening or whatever, I'm producing music on the iPad, believe it or not. I'm just always on GarageBand, and I have sort of my own studio. And I'm just always learning how to mix, Google how to EQ a right cymbal, compression, all that stuff. So I should send you some stuff because I've come a long way. Um,
Uh,
in
I'd
terms of
love to hear
my
it.
songwriting. So it would be exciting to go out with an original band, but I just really
Yeah.
haven't had the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
thanks for that download. What it made me think of, as you were talking, having been in so many different iterations of bands, and we're going to name drop in a minute so our listeners can realize how semi-famous Mike and I are, or our brushes with fame is. But I think it's helpful to the listeners to think of, a band, right, it's the same as a team in sports. It's the same as a group of work people on a project. It's the same as a family, to a degree, right? Sometimes,
Yeah,
what's the
it's a
saying,
team.
right? You don't get to choose your family. Sometimes you don't get to choose the musicians who are in your band. You
Yeah.
have to work with them. And I would say one of the things I always felt was interesting, right, and relates back to you and I playing together is, you once we embarked on our journey and you were like, oh, listen to this. I think you even threw some original songs at me the first night we
hmm
played, like,
I'm
oh,
sure I
check
did.
check
Yeah.
this out. And what's the tough thing there is a lead person like yourself is obviously generally a type A, right? I happen to be a type A, as many
Classified.
musicians are. Right. So you've got the type A saying, I've got this piece of art, right, which is near and dear to your soul because it came from a whole bunch of different things. And then you're presenting this art to other people, who weren't not necessarily along the journey with your art and sometimes barely knew you. And they're saying, okay, here's what I'm thinking for the drums, or just do your thing, right? Like you're saying, you're sitting there with a Ziggy Stardust shirt on, David Bowie, like you're saying, wouldn't be dictatorial. Many other musicians are dictatorial, if that's the correct word, probably getting
Yeah.
that wrong. So, but
Dictators. Yeah.
you all have to figure it out together. At least at like our level, right? I mean, if you're a hired gun and you have to play for Sting, you will play the part that has been written for you and you will not deviate unless you find something that may be interestingly creative. So that's what thus leads to, Spinal Tap 2 just came out, right? So that was kind of interesting. That's what leads, I think, to the battling, that goes on. It's
Hmm.
just like you have this whole collision, but it's such a beautiful thing in all the music that we made together. Down the road there was grueling periods of both love and, I will go as far to say, like, I hate him, just for a
Hmm.
moment. Or I'm sure many frontmen turned around to me and were like, I hate that drummer,
Hmm.
because I don't necessarily want to hear his opinion. Um, so that's been just it to people who aren't in bands. I would encourage you, the next time you look up at a band and you go, wow, think of all those people are working together towards a common goal, and there's probably a whole bunch of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we were never exposed to.
Oh, forget it. Yeah.
But you made it out on the other side, so it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's again,
um
you just acquire wisdom. You learn how, very much like a relationship with a man and a woman, or or two people, I should say. A relationship with two people. Um, there's a lot of give and take, and but I think the most important thing is that there's got to be chemistry. Which is what I really, really love about the Decoys current lineup is the level of chemistry in this band is just, I've never experienced anything like it. How each member of the band has this level of intuition where as soon as the song starts, every member just boom does exactly. It's just amazing just how the music just comes to life. And like we're even playing on a porch outside where the sound is usually like a little weird. And I'm like, it sounds like I'm in a recording studio, which is another cool thing. It's like the sound. I mean, we're not bringing in a lot of gear. It's acoustic instruments, which really helps. But it's just very pleasurable. And I'm kind of at the
sure.
point now where, and I'm 62 years old, and it's like being in a band is physically difficult. And, if you're going out and you're doing, it's work, traveling and driving. And I hit a fawn on the way home a couple weeks ago. It was tragic experience, horrible. But, it's just, it's so, I like it when it's easy. And one thing that we haven't talked about, but it's important to sort of mention is the whole jam element where I really enjoy playing musicians such as yourself, because not every musician can do this, even the most learned musicians, where you can just sort of jam off the cuff and start a song, but then just kind of go on this journey, during the song, like just kind of take it. And like we used to do in Euphoria Studio all the time, just go off on these like tangents in a way with the songs. And you have no idea where it's going, where it's going to end up. And generally in the Decoys, I'm the one that leads that, you know, but it's just really fun to just play spontaneously where you're just playing stuff. You didn't rehearse it. You don't even really know what you're playing, but the whole band is just going, and it's just a magical thing. And you and the mando player will start weaving, and then you and the guitar player start weaving. Then the three of you start weaving your parts, and then the song coming down, and then it goes up. And that's the most fun aspect of music, like as opposed to just going out there and going, my dog got shot today, like it's just, that's what I love. It's just the fun and the unpredictability, is kind of what makes the Decoys fun. And, sometimes the whole song goes, but it is what it is. And nobody cares because everybody's drunk at that point anyway.
We
Hmm.
right, we commonly
Yeah.
refer that to that as a train wreck.
Yeah.
So as we're winding down here, Mike, because I could talk for you for 20 hours, and we'll probably make this a recurring thing because listeners, you should know we have. I know we have a lot of stories together. We have a lot of
Content.
stories alone, and we could have just great content coming forth. But what I would want to bring with our listeners is our brush with greatness back in the day, 2 years. Walk me through your memory of two bands that we built together that one didn't win the Country America, Battle of the Bands, and one that won. Walk me through your memories of those and why you would say we we played 2 years in a row. 1 year we lost and 1 year we won. What was that whole process like for
Oh,
you?
it's very
And what were
easy.
some of the fun anecdotes of the people we met?
Yeah, well, like we got a lot of stories. But yeah, I think the whole difference was is that it was a corporate event. It was basically, people in the different, agencies put together bands that normally hadn't really been together before. And, we put together a band of, I think, 5 or 6 people, and it was more or less based on people who wanted to do it. And I think I was kind of like the driving force in the way where the people I knew, became in the band. But I think it was just more or less a question of like we got to before, where there was so many different sensibilities happening. Um, right down to the off Wall Street jam sensibility too, where it was like they just threw monkey wrenches into the whole operation continuously because they were producing the event. And, I mean, I don't know, should they have been doing it? I don't know. I'm not giving them a slight because I love the off Wall Street jam because you could get off of work and go there and all the guitars and everything were right there, and they were really cool people. But in the end, it was just because the band was very scattered. There really wasn't a cohesiveness to it. The personalities, there just weren't really the ability. There were all walks of life all kind of thrown together. It was just kind of like making a bad dish. You throw in your rosemary, you throw some garlic in, you throw some salt in. Oh, I'm gonna throw mustard in there, and then somebody eats it. They're like, yeah. I mean, did we have fun? Was it fun? It was okay, but there was just no musicality to it. It was just kind of like, again, I directed that and I think we did okay, but it just wasn't really, and as opposed to the second time around, you take 4 or 5 cats who are brothers, musical brothers, and then put them in SIR for weeks on end, playing the same 3 songs over and over again. I mean, the level of tightness that we had and just that whole right down to we had to stand in a certain spot at a certain time on the stairs, I remember, and then, we had the stage manager who had everything written down. It was just crazy. And yeah, I mean, we were basically as good as probably anybody that night. I mean, you could stack us up against the Mavericks even that night. I kind of felt. And we made Shania Twain, who was a judge, dance on our chair, which was kind of interesting because I was like, wow, Shania Twain is dancing on our chair, as opposed to the first band where I read in page 6 of the New York Post the next day that Dr. Joyce Brothers, who was a judge, put cigarette butts in her ears because it was too loud. So she was using them as earplugs back when you could just inside. You can't do that anymore.
So
So
smart.
yeah, so that's
Exactly.
the difference.
Exactly.
That's the difference, and it's the same thing for a bar band. If you go out in a bar and you're just like, when you don't really read the room and look at people's faces and look at the tables. Like I'm always keeping track of the table. I'm like, oh, okay, a group just came in. They just sat down, and this is all while you're knocking on heaven's door. Oh, they just sat down. Oh, they're kind of looking this way. Oh, they're tapping on their tables. And then you watch them eat their dinner, and then, and then you'll watch to see what they do. And sure enough, they're ordering another drink. And that's what you want them to be doing as opposed to like, because I've had plenty of gigs with some bands that didn't quite get it. Mainly volume level was way too loud, where you start playing and then you collectively watch the place empty out on you because you'll watch the people go, huh, yeah. Then they all look at each other and kind of shrug their shoulders. And then all the jackets go on. And then you see that the whole table just like empty out and you're like, yeah, so it's just, you gotta make sure that you're on your game when you're doing that stuff. Um, and a good seasoned band, they know how to play to the room. They know what kind of gear to bring in, you know, um, based on the room that you're playing in. I mean, there's a whole science to it. I mean, I don't have to tell you, lights, I mean, I have the ducks. I like to put the ducks out, because it's kind of, we have a new sign now that has QR codes on it, so you can QR code the website or the tip, you know. Tips is a whole new concept now. You always got to have the tip jar out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. For
We
sure.
have a
For sure.
tripod.
Well, so much. Yeah, so much as that is so helpful, Mike, because it's I think one of the many takeaways from here is about reading the room, right? And that's in all of our personal and professional lives.
In sales as well.
Is the
Yeah.
bands that I think that, yeah, it's just understanding. One thing I always did, that volume issue that you talked about is so enormous, and I make it a point in my life, being so musically and sonically focused, simply, especially as the drummer, looking out at the proximity of when people talk to each other, and if they have to really lean in, your audience, and it's difficult for challenging for them to speak to each other, um, you're too loud. You just are. And because that's not comfortable for someone. And eventually you're actually going to wear them out, and you're going to drive them out of the bar because they're not even aware of it. Like, you're
Yeah.
hurting them
Yeah.
over time, just like we are on stage.
Yeah.
Versus if you see them speaking reasonably comfortably, I mean, you still have a band going on, and they're staying, that means you hit it right, right? Because they're not necessarily at a concert. They're at, you and I have played concerts, and it's okay to just let loose because that's
Yeah.
what people want to hear.
Yeah.
Um, but when you're playing at a bar and whatever, you're a part of that social scene.
Yeah.
So I want to know, just because I want to glory grab for a second with Mike. So what we were speaking of was in 1995, and we believe in 1996. Mike and I were in so many bands, but we got the opportunity to play at the Country America, a now defunct magazine, Battle of the Bands,
What?
at what a place was in the city, which was a huge venue called the Rock Ridge Saloon. It was in the West 50s. It held roughly 1,000 people, and for 2 years in a row, we played that gig, and you nailed it. The first year, we did not deserve to win because it was too disjointed, and we really didn't have our act together, and for a whole host of reasons. But then the second year, we got much more serious about it because we wanted to win. And both years, we opened for what is still an amazing band, the Mavericks. It's kind of a Cuban country mix, which is amazing. And we got to play their gear. I remember I played a 26-inch bass drum. I've never played that before in my life. But, we opened for a seriously professional rock band in front
Yeah.
of 1,000 people, and
Yeah.
had those kind of guests going on. And there was no doubt when we put our sticks or picks or whatever it was away the second year that we had crushed it, and we knew we had
Yeah.
won. So that was a collective of all the things Mike has just shared with you. Was the diligence, it was the practice, it was the learning, it was the arguing inside the band and
Yeah. The
coming to a
brotherhood.
conclusion and coming to a yeah, the brotherhood. I think you mentioned it best, of
Yeah.
having a reciprocity about, hey, you and I may not agree on a whole bunch of things, but when we step onto that stage, we know our common job, just like in every aspect of life, is to please the people who have given us the share of their time to actually listen to us,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is really super special.
It's kind of fun,
Um, so you've covered. Yeah, it's kind of fun. We've been doing it. I'll be playing it till the day I pass from this planet.
Yeah.
And I hope my kids pick it back up because they both started to play piano and guitar and were getting good. And then
Yeah.
we got divorced, and then they didn't really play anymore. So, that's always a drag. But it's kind of cool. So, Mike, what would you tell any aspiring, let's say we're getting some parents on here that they've got kids who are wanting to get into it? What would you leave kind of with the thought of someone who wants to embark upon a musical journey, how they should go about it?
Um, well, it depends on the journey, I guess. because again, there are different levels of musicianship. Like for instance, I like to go over and jam with this guy who's a friend of mine. He's a realtor. It's actually one of the top brokers around. But anyway, he's a guitar player, but he doesn't want to play out. He doesn't want to play in front of anybody. But I go sit on his porch with him and look at his horses, and we play and sing songs, and we're both on the same level. It doesn't matter. And he's a very technical type of person. So he has all the songs on paper. He's got them all written out, all the chords, and he has to read them to play them, which is fine. And I'm sitting there and I'm playing more, like sometimes I know the song, sometimes I don't, but we're kind of on equal footing. So my advice to anybody with music is just enjoy it. And if you want your kid to start playing music because you're big into it, the best thing to do is just kind of influence them. Just have music on so they're hearing it. And then, just to encourage them to have songs. Like my 4-year-old granddaughter, she's got a lot of favorite songs that she sings. Um, but and the funny thing about her is that she plays the piano and it sounds like she's playing. It's like, oh my God. But she doesn't really want to do it, which is really frustrating because you're like, because she's just like the way her fingers move and the way she's reading every note that she touches. It's like, whoa, you know, genius, but you can't force her to do it. You can keep it out and maybe she will, but. But if anybody wants to play music, my advice is just enjoy it. Do it for enjoyment. Just like anything else. Don't make it a job, you know, because if you're enjoying it, you're going to progress. Um, you're going to hit plateaus. It's going to be emotional. Sometimes you're going to pick up a guitar and not really be able to do much at all. Sometimes you're going to pick it up and you'll be like, the best guitar player ever. It's kind of a reflection of your mood. It's a reflection of your life, essentially. Like for instance, I play with a drummer who, when the guy is in like, you can tell what kind of a mood he's in by the way he's playing drums. You could just tell. It's just, it's just one of those instruments that you're channeling your whole emotional being. And again, you might play Madison Square Garden, you might play the Chipmunks outside. Well, that might even be too much, whatever, just enjoy it. Um, it doesn't really matter. From my perspective, it's funny because I have a lot of different levels of gear. And this particular guitar, it's a Fender Hellcat that Tim Armstrong, Rancid of all bands, I guess, designed this guitar. It's like a $300 guitar. I have like $2,000 guitars, but this guitar, I just love it, man. When I perform with it, when I play it, it feels really good. And my brother had let me borrow this for a gig, and then I went to give it back. And I was like, oh, I really like that guitar. And he's like, you can keep it. And I was like, are you kidding me? So that's another thing. You don't have to go out there and spend a lot of money. I learned on a 5-string guitar. I play electric guitar without any amplifier. I mean, it's just, whatever. It's like the thing I love about it is like anything goes. It doesn't have to be anything. It's just all about, just enjoy it.
Just have fun and just enjoy it. Well, I 100% agree. So, Mike, I want to close and thank you for your time. I want to thank Mike for his time and you, the audience, for you giving us your time, as so many people in both Mike and I's musical careers have done so. So, from whether it's mastering the strings of a guitar to leading bands that produce soulful melodies, our journey has been more than just about music. It's been a symphony of setting goals, overcoming challenges, pursuing our passions relentlessly. Whether you're a fellow musician or someone who's driven by a different ambition, today's episode is all about transforming your dreams into reality. So we're so glad you tuned in to explore the art of setting your sights, hitting your notes, and making your life a masterpiece. Thank you so much. This has been Brian McFarland again with my friend Mike Mondello.